Welcome back to RTM's podcast, Track Talk. I'm your host for today's episode, Matt Roberts, and I'm joined by Kate Jennings, Policy Director at the Railway Industry Association, or RIA. Rail is currently undergoing a significant period of uncertainty and change with coronavirus, coming out of lockdown, and how we respond as an industry to protect the supply chain, carry out contracts, and work in a manner which is safe but functional throughout the industry. As such, I'm thoroughly looking forward to talking to Kate and finding out a bit more from someone that has a real expertise and a real insight. I do hope that you, our listeners, enjoy it just as much.
Invisi Smart Technologies is a biotechnology company that has been at the forefront of research into antimicrobial coatings for over 10 years and have found the perfect solution to protect the railway from another pandemic. They have engineered a next-generation nano-coating treatment that uses photocatalytic technology based on titanium dioxide to eliminate and remove infectious particles.
Welcome back to the to RTM's podcast. As you may have noticed by the introduction and the branding, we've actually underwent a bit of a change visually to it. We've got our new brand name, Track Talk, and we're pleased to welcome Kate Jennings from the Railway Industry Association as our first guest on Track Talk. It's the same podcast, but we used lockdown to really get the brand in. So thank you for joining me, Kate.
No, you're welcome. It's great to be here today.
Perfect. And so obviously our listeners will probably be aware of who the Railway Industry Association are. So Kate, at RIA, you are a policy director. Could you maybe, for people who don't necessarily know what a policy director job role entails, explain a bit about what you do?
Yes, of course. So I'm the new policy director. So, to some extent, I'm sort of thinking myself, what is my job and how can I do it well? So I would say that my role is supporting the RIA member relationship with government and clients to make sure that there is a vibrant, sustainable supply sector. And within that, we've got priorities, so RIA has documents like the manifesto we did around the time of the election last year. And that has in it things like the call for a 30-year plan for rail, clear pipelines of work, recognition of the value of rail, that rail is good for things like carbon and air quality and skills. And I suppose as policy director, I'm identifying those policy links, sort of things like what does the carbon or levelling up agenda mean for rail in support of my members.
Perfect. And I suppose, as you say, you identify sort of the key areas that are of significance to the members of RIA, and I suppose it's unavoidable at the moment, the big sort of talking point being coronavirus. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're also the lead coronavirus response coordinator at RIA. So that's become a big policy front, I suppose, at the moment.
Yes, that's right. That's, in the last few weeks, that's been my biggest area of work. And what it's meant in practice is, meeting government and clients to facilitate dialogue directly with our members. So we've had lots of calls with government, with the rail minister, the BEIS industrial strategy minister, and the trade minister in the IT. We've had meetings with Mark Thurston from High Speed 2 Limited, with Andrew Haynes from Network Rail. And those meetings have been very open, really facilitating dialogue about how is coronavirus affecting the industry? Are there problems that we can fix, that we can work together to sort? And I think we've had some real good successes from that. So things like recognition of rail workers as key workers, support for them, the fact they never stopped working, recognition from the rail minister in particular that where work can be done safely, it should go ahead. So supporting government and Network Rail in the development of worker guidance. So it feels like, for me, it was a bit of being thrown in the deep end, but it's been a great opportunity for me to get to know our members and to facilitate that dialogue with government and clients.
No, definitely. I mean, I think myself, I always follow the sink or swim motto. So it certainly seems like that's been the case. And by the sounds of it, obviously, I know it's probably limited what you can and can't say. But it does sound like there's a lot of positivity there and a lot of belief that we can, as a rail industry, come together and solve these maybe problems that have arisen.
Yes, definitely. I mean, what I hear my members saying is that, they really value that support, the fact that DFT and the rail minister in particular are really listening. And I think the leadership that we've seen from Network Rail in particular, they've been really responsive on things like, supporting suppliers, prompt payment, High Speed 2 as well, bringing forward those prompt payment terms. Making sure that they'd got contact points so that if suppliers had issues that they could talk about them, and keeping us informed about what's going on. So as the rules have changed on things like, social distance guidance or wearing of face masks and things, getting access to hotels, some of the practical problems, it's been really useful just to have that conversation and to come up with solutions together.
Definitely, and as you mentioned there briefly, the sort of moving forward of the of payments, of getting sort of early doors contracts and stuff underway, that's a big part of giving the supply chain this confidence of sort of longevity. I know RIA has carried out quite a bit of research recently and surveyed your members about sort of the impact on the supply chain specifically. How confident, in your view, are you that we can sort of meet the needs of the supply chain to keep everyone in rail going?
So we did the survey in April, and it was, so I suppose it was quite early in the coronavirus response cycle. So that, I would caveat this with the fact the results are maybe sort of indicative. But the key messages at that point were that the furlough scheme and government financial support, but particularly the furlough scheme, was really valuable. There was a strong desire to keep working, so that key worker sort of point. But also a sort of sobering note, the fact that companies would struggle to survive if the lockdown lasted more than 6 months. So, there was an initial pause where people worked out how to work safely. But I think it's good now that we have seen workers coming back to work. We understand that Network Rail, for example, did about £400 million worth of work in April, which is fantastic. Now, we really want to see the work coming to market, happening. So I think our message now to government and clients is if they can bring work forward, if they can make things happen, because we don't want to be furloughing people. We want people to be working. And if there's design work or survey work that you can just get on with, then it makes sense to do that. And I think that's one of the really practical ways that government and clients can support the supply chain and make sure it's there for them in the future. On survey data, you may be aware that the government and the Rail Supply Group have just done a major survey. I understand they've received over 400 responses. So we're really interested to see the results of that, and that will help inform future priorities for the industry and the supply chain.
Yeah, and it's been about building that understanding so that we can mitigate risk wherever we can. As you say, we don't want to furlough staff. We want to keep this workforce going. And that's across the board. And that has meant that we've had to have quite significant and unusual changes. One in particular has been sort of around how you socially distance a railway. It's not a sort of process built necessarily from scratch to socially distance. And we're seeing services increase, but at this reduced capacity. So from obviously RIA's point of view, you have a great inside view through your members and through your own work. How do we go about socially distancing this?
Well, I think there's some really great guidance out there now. So the Construction Leadership Council guidance, applies at the sort of construction industry level, and then the rail guidance sort of is nested sort of under that. I would say it's sort of broadly consistent. I think we've seen some fantastic pictures really, which show how the rail industry is responding, and some practical arrangements. So things like having one-way systems, thinking through how you get your staff to work in the mornings, what that means for sort of car sharing or not. And when work has to be done within the sort of 2 meter rule, which sometimes it does, what's the best way to make sure that is done as safely as possible? Because there are trade-offs here. Sometimes, obviously rail is an industry that has safety at its core. It's fundamental, isn't it? And sometimes there will be there might be a trade-off between that 2 meter rule and the need to maintain the railway or to keep the railway safe. So, that's where some of these rules about, wearing of face masks if needed, or limiting the time that you spend within the 2 meter rule, or having sort of families of staff, so if you do need to work more closely together, it's with the same people, a bit like the social isolation rules around working at home. So I think the industry's come up with some really helpful practical guidance. And I know, it's not been Ria's job here, but I know there've been some really good conversations with the unions to make sure that this sort of works for everybody. Um, you asked about, the 70% capacity. So I think, given that context, the railway industry is ready to sort of start running more services. I think government, having said that, is right to say at the moment avoid public transport, so that we can keep that 2 meter rule. But we also have to have a 30-year view. So, we need to keep investing in rail because it's great for transport into and between cities, because it's good for carbon, because it's good for communities. So we need to find a way, to sort of to make sure that this isn't a tipping point to wake up towards cars, because that's not the right answer. The right answer is to invest in rail for all the reasons that we know rail is great.
Introducing Invisi Smart Shield, a revolutionary nanomolecular coating that kills 99.99% of bacteria and virus.
We have come so far in investing into rail to sort of move away from cars and offer these greener, these lower carbon opportunities. And it is about getting that balancing act, making sure that we do meet the guidance wherever it is suitable and safe to do so. And that's across the entire board. That's projects as well. As we heard, Network Rail in particular have innovated to carry out an incredible amount of work, seeing an opportunity in the reduced services on the line. And I suppose it's that sort of outside the box thinking that from yourselves and Ria and from everyone in the industry has been great to see, because it doesn't just get our railway services back on sort of track, it gets projects back on track as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely right. And I think what it's obviously been a big hit on the economy and a hit on, rail too, but there are opportunities to innovate and do things differently. And I think as government's thinking about restoring the timetable, I think one of the things that we've been talking about is saying, well, actually, if there are less passengers, can we have longer possessions? And does that mean we can bring renewals work forwards? Can we use digital technologies and off-site design to minimise the need for workers on site? And it's been great to see that starting to happen. I know there was work on a West Coast mainline tunnel recently that was a great example of that. And I like to say, we'd like to see more of that. It's great to see the notice to proceed on things like High Speed 2 and planning decisions in place. We need to now, be accelerating work and make sure it's happening. We recognise that in London it's sometimes been harder, for people to get to work because they have to travel by public transport, and therefore there was a bit more of a slowdown in London. But we would really like now to engage with Transport for London more to make sure that London is delivering on the rail projects that it's committed to, because that's good.
Yeah, it's sort of taking sort of whatever opportunities we can there, and really having the sort of foresight, as you mentioned, having these conversations with the likes of government and with those involved across the board and all partners of these projects, and go, actually, we've got an opportunity here. As much as we've got delays and we've got difficulties to overcome, we have the opportunity to do this work. And I suppose from what we talked earlier, it sounds like the conversation, especially with government, to get the green light to go ahead with this as well, has been quite positive.
Yes, it has, and I think it's good also that we've, from the Prime Minister down, I think everyone sees infrastructure investment and rail specifically as a way to reboot the economy. That investing in rail is good for the economy, it's good for jobs, it's good for communities, and you end up with long-term assets. So even if you're having to borrow to do that investment, it feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the other key areas in managing this sort of situation with coronavirus is ensuring everyone has relevant and useful information in it. And I know RIA has a big part in that with the Coronavirus Information Hub. So I don't know if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, so what we've tried to do on our website is to summarise the information that is most relevant to rail. So there's, inevitably masses of information about coronavirus. Things are moving quite quickly. So on our website, we've created this dedicated area. And then for members, we've got in this coronavirus section all of the videos of all of our conversations, with clients and government, or write-ups of the meetings if we weren't able to video them. So there is we've got a summary document which sort of summarises some of the key advice from government and others. We're just trying to be helpful really to members and making sure that not everybody can be in every conversation, but we do want everybody to know what conversations have happened, and see the work that we've been doing. So they can challenge us as much as anything. If there's something we're missing or a conversation that we need to have, they can tell us. Equally, if we have got useful information about how Andrew Haynes sees investment in the railway happening, or Mark Thurston's advice on something for High Speed 2, or indeed the rail minister or the Bays ministers, that you can see what ministers are thinking,
Yeah,
which is helpful.
definitely. As you say, if we can get that information, even if members can't be there themselves, sort of pushing that information throughout the organisation is only going to help. And I suppose that brings us nicely into your views, both your own and as RIA, as to sort of where we sit at the moment as a rail industry, what to sort of expect in the coming weeks as much as we can. Things change so quickly at the moment, because the lockdown did begin in March and we're now towards the end of May. There's been a lot of change in that time.
Yes, I think that's right, and I think initially, what I would expect is continuing to work safely, but also moving into that phase of rail rebooting the economy. So great to see the notice to proceed on High Speed 2. It's a good time to be thinking of speeding up work, bringing forward renewals where that can happen, or making commitments to enhancement decisions, because I think the rail industry really wants to just get on with working safely, but doing that in a way that supports local jobs and communities, helps to develop skills, helps to deliver on things like those sort of carbon and air quality commitments. I thought it was really valuable in one of the conversations that we had with our senior members and Mark Thurston, that he talked about the need for rail workers to be good neighbours, and I think that's true. We know that sometimes the work that our members do creates noise and dust and disruption, but for a good reason. And I think these sort of conversations are good, both to drive the work forward and to make sure that we are doing things, we're working in the right way. So I'd expect to see really more of the same, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, these renewals and moving projects such as HS2 Forward, it can have a really significant impact to those local communities. It offers jobs, skills, training throughout there, and starts to rebuild sort of local economies. And that is going to be a huge part of coming out of this virus, not just in rail, but across the board, sort of the UK's economic recovery. And I know we've spoke about that previously as well. I think we're both, and likely all of our readers in the rail industry, are champions of rail's role in that process. But I don't know if you could talk us through a little bit more your thoughts on rail playing a part in that economic recovery.
Yes, absolutely. So I thought sort of three things I'd say on this. So the first is that rail is a national asset. It's a bit like the National Health Service. I think it supports. It's sort of like the backbone of the country. It supports communities getting to work, for leisure, family and friends, staying in touch. It will be central in the future to livable cities and zero carbon. Telling that story of rail as a national asset, I think, is really important. And then, 30-year investment plans. It's great to see, government, Network Rail, all starting to think longer term, because I think what that means is that, for my members, that they can plan ahead, they can recruit and develop teams, they can, be secure. But it also means for people and individuals, children at school now, they can look to rail as a sector where they might want to do an apprenticeship. They might want to get a STEM job as an engineer. We can develop skills, for communities, which is central to things like the government's levelling up agenda. And I heard, I'll steal this from someone else. I heard someone else say that 30-year plans are long enough for SMEs to grow into global companies, and I think that's a fantastic soundbite, isn't it? It's like this is what we mean by a sustainable supply chain. We don't just mean the same, major companies. Of course, we want those big companies to do really well and to be seen to do well, but we also want to develop the expertise and opportunities for the smaller companies. So that 30-year plan, I think, is really important. And then finally, what does all of this mean for exports and trade? The UK's relationship with Europe and the world is changing and evolving. And I think rail again, if we're delivering world-class projects, if we're doing things like Crossrail and High Speed 2, and you look at projects like London Bridge or St Pancras, what we do is world class, and we need to celebrate that and learn from those successes, and then use that to think about what that means for our exports from rail and for trade policy sort of generally.
Yeah, it's rail has this sort of incredible opportunity, so to speak, at the moment, that not only can we plan and start projects rolling, which brings sort of local money in now, but as you say, these 30-year plans give us sort of ability to look forward at a time where most industries that is quite a difficult sort of task. And I think, as you say, that gives it a strength that people can plan, they can level up areas, and hopefully, as you say, we will see in the future other companies that maybe are SMEs now join that sort of bigger table as these huge, well-known sort of names.
No, that's right. Yes, I think it is it's a difficult moment, isn't it? Because clearly coronavirus has had fundamental impact on the economy, but on people. It's clearly very sad what is happening around us. But I think we do need to look after each other, stay safe, listen to the government guidance on things like going back to work safely. But also seize the moment, seize the opportunities, and celebrate what rail can do.
I think, to be honest, that's probably the strongest message we can sort of end on there, of seizing that moment and sort of this is rail's opportunity to make a significant difference. So I think for myself, and I'm sure equally from all of our listeners, thank you so much, Kate, for taking the time to talk to us today. I'm sure you're a very busy person at the moment with everything going on.
No, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for this conversation today.
Invisi Smart Technologies have developed a coating spray which forms a permanent barrier that destroys virus and bacteria upon contact for a year, keeping passengers and staff safe whilst travelling. Tested against COVID-19 and a plethora of other pathogens, Invisi Smart Shield is the cost-effective solution to allow our rail network to recommence a safe environment. We are all in this together.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Track Talk, RTM's newly rebranded podcast. I've been your host, Matt Roberts, and once again, as we said in the outro, I'd like to thank Kate Jennings and Ria for taking the time to come on the show. With some great topics of conversation and a real sort of belief and message that the rail industry can respond well to the challenges it's currently facing. I hope you'll keep an eye out for our next episode, and you've enjoyed today. Thank you and goodbye.